witnessed in Chicago, Minneapolis, and across the country. I'm sorry to say we've made little progress in reaching an agreement. The administration's campaign of terror has led to the detention of innocent people, serious injuries, and deaths, including those of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis, both American citizens who were exercising their constitutional rights to observe and protest ICE enforcement. Americans are seeing this chaos play out in countless videos, and they're demanding change. President Trump has justified these militarized immigration enforcement operations as targeting the worst of the worst, and quote, murderers, rapists, terrorists, the criminally insane. But the statistics of the Department of Homeland Security tell a much different story, the real story. New reporting from CBS News shows that less than 14% of the nearly 400,000 immigrants arrested by ICE in 2025 had charges or convictions for violent criminal offenses. The president was railing at his rallies. We're going after the murderers, the terrorists, the rapists, the child abusers. And then take a look at the numbers. Less than 14% of the 400,000 immigrants arrested by ICE in 2025 had charges for convictions for violent crimes and offenses. And this data from DHS indicates that only 2% of those arrested by ICE over the past year have any alleged gang affiliations. 2%. Nearly 40% of all those arrested by ICE in 2025 did not have any criminal record at all. None. And that's the truth of the matter. These militarized immigration enforcement operations are not really designed to lock up the worst of the worst. They are designed to sow fear in a community. I saw it Saturday. St. Pius V Church in Little Village in the city of Chicago, an Hispanic community. The people all wore masks and were very careful where they walked and when they went shopping, when they went to a restaurant, when they went to church. That's the climate of fear that's been created by this operation. Removing dangerous criminals, 2%. 2% of those arrested and detained and separated from their families had any criminal background. And while Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota has been in the national spotlight recently, the city of Chicago, as I mentioned, is no stranger to Trump's campaign of terror. Last week, I also attended a Democratic forum examining Department of Homeland Security's use of violence in immigration enforcement operations. There I learned what happened to a 30-year-old Montessori school teacher, Miramar Martinez. Listen to this story and tell me that ICE is focusing on terrorists. Miramar Martinez, on a Saturday morning, decided to take some spare clothing in her closet to her local church to give to people who might need it. She got in her car, drove over to her church. Miramar Martinez is a United States citizen. She was born and raised in Chicago. What happened to her? ICE confronted her on a major street in Chicago on that Saturday morning. And when she drove away, they fired and it hit her 5 times. 5 times they shot her. A CBP agent during the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz. 5 times. She's lucky to be alive. Ms. Martinez described that moment in her opening statement. She said, I struggle with the memories of it every day, the shots ringing out and the burning sensations as the bullets ripped through my skin and body. What crime is she guilty of? Taking spare clothing to her church on a Saturday morning. Good enough for ICE to fire away. The fact that Ms. Martinez is alive today after being shot 5 times is a miracle. I told her as much. But immediately after the shooting of Mr. Martinez, the agent, I won't say his name, we know what it is, the agent of CBP a 23-year veteran, went on his cell phone and bragged about his shooting abilities in private text to fellow agents. He wrote, and I quote, "I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes in her body. Put that in your book, boys." He was so proud of himself. He shot this woman, this 30-year-old Montessori teacher, 5 times. What happened to the van that they allege she rammed into, causing this shooting incident? Mysteriously, it disappeared from the scene. The ICE van was taken away. Well, where would they take the ICE van? They took it to Maine, 1,000 miles away from Chicago. Why Maine? That happened to be where the agent lived. But it also was an effort to cover up the actual evidence of what happened that day. You see, there was no indication on the van, the body of the van, that she rammed into it, and she did not. There was no evidence whatsoever. But they removed the evidence. So what happened when they brought the charges in court against Miramar Martinez for ramming into the ICE van and for defying the agents? What happened to those charges? They were all dropped. 5 times that woman was shot on the streets of Chicago, and when it came to pressing charges, the government dropped all charges against her. Miss Martinez, a teaching assistant to little kids, spoke of the trauma she continues to carry with her. Quote, "The physical scars will always be there in the mornings and evenings. When I get dressed and I stare at my body, I'm now permanently disfigured by the 5 bullet holes." She continued, quote, "There will be time this summer when I head to the beach with my dogs and family. There will be there when I get down on the floor with the students. That shooting will be with her the rest of her life." They dropped all charges. They removed the van that was involved in this incident 1,000 miles away and repainted it. Does Ms. Martinez sound like the worst of the worst? Does she sound like a murderer, a rapist, a terrorist, criminally insane? Of course not. Why are we letting this happen in America? For goodness sakes, the Constitution is clear. There are guarantees people have of their own freedom and liberty. My friends on the other side of the aisle look past that. They don't want to talk about it. I'm afraid I can't stop talking about it because what happened to her is totally unjust. So now we're trying to change the scene. We're doing this because what happened to her must stop. That's why Senate Democrats are setting to rein in ICE and CBP. Last week, leaders Schumer and Jeffries laid out our reforms to federal immigration enforcement in writing. All we're asking is that ICE and other federal immigration agents adhere to reasonable standards to maintain trust, safety, and accountability in our communities. So what specifically are we demanding? First, stop these roving patrols. The United States is a nation governed by the rule of law. Government agents cannot indiscriminately round up people without probable cause, and they can't break down the doors of someone's home and disappear them without a judicial warrant. Did you see the video in Minneapolis when they broke down the door of one of these families? The man was taking a shower. He wrapped a towel around himself and in freezing weather was dragged out to the ICE vehicle. Turns out they knocked down the wrong door. They identified the wrong person. They crashed his door, invaded his home, and had no basis for doing so whatsoever. Government agents cannot indiscriminately round up people without probable cause, and they can't be breaking down the door of your home. There is an amendment to the Constitution which was written specifically to protect us from this sort of government behavior. Second, there needs to be accountability, including new use of force standards that allow local law enforcement to participate in investigating complaints of excessive force by immigration agents. Do you think if there was an investigation of the shooting of Miramar Martinez, that they'd allow the vehicle that was involved, ICE vehicle involved, to be removed 1,000 miles away from Chicago and repainted before any hearing? Of course not. And there should be no immigration enforcement operations at sensitive locations like hospitals, schools, churches, courts, and polling places. Finally, we're asking that body cameras be mandatory and masks come off. Masks off, cameras on. Virtually every professional law enforcement department in my state and the nation has accepted that standard, all except for ICE. They want to be secret police, secret paramilitary, and they want to wear masks to hide their identity. What are we doing in this country? Democrats are united in our calls for these common sense reforms. The American people back us up on every single one of them. This week, we need the Republicans to work in good faith to get the deal done. In the meantime, I want to note something. Secretary Noem, she's been on television a lot, hasn't she? Paid ads as well as her own appearances. She has not appeared once before the Senate Judiciary Committee in the last year. When I've asked repeatedly of the chairman of that committee to bring her in for an accountability session, he's tried with no luck. She says she's too busy to appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee and explain the lethal mismanagement of her agency and the damage that's being done. She says now she may come in a few weeks if she's not too busy, I might add, and if she still happens to be the secretary of that department. The administration must end this aggressive immigration enforcement surge and mass deportation campaign. ICE and federal agents need to play by the same rules as professional police forces across America. That's the bottom line. If your police force in your town and your state can do its job without wearing a mask on the job, can do the job with a video camera recording what actually happened at an event, why in the world are these federal agencies treated any differently? Why are they given special privileges? So they can arrest 2% of the people that they're looking for? That's not a very enviable record. Mr. President, I yield the floor.